Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 RBC Heritage Data Dive Show. Per usual, on a Monday night, we're going to take our first look at the forecast for Hilton Head and Harbor Town. See if we think we need to factor the forecast into our projections. We're going to take a deep statistical look into Harbor Town and historical RBC heritage. See what types of players, types of shots, what are the most important skill sets around Harbor Town, figure out the players in the field this week who fit those skill sets and patterns, and then towards the end of the show, I'll show you whatever little research I can regarding past champions. So we have a lot to get into. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts. The Rabbit Hole is acquiring or merging with Fantasy National, so I am am in the process of migrating all of my data over to the Rabbit Hole formatting. Very slow, tedious process, but making some headway on that. But if you want the best golf analytics site out there at your fingertips, make sure you go check out the Rabbit Hole. Has everything you need to make the correct wagers, optimize your lineups. It has a tournament simulator. Of course, everything that I show you throughout the show every night is directly from the Rabbit Hole. So it has everything you need at the power of your fingertips. Make sure you go check out the Rabbit Hole. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I put out research every Monday regarding the tournament of the week, some tournament info, course info, patterns of previous winners, things of that nature. Didn't do anything for the RBC Heritage this week and today, just due to the fact that it is a fairly new format with being a signature event. So I'll try to have something next year for this, but with only a couple of years of data, didn't feel great with the very limited patterns that I saw. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money, and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Would not recommend it if I did not believe in it. I recommended it and so on for years now. And a lot of you have joined over there, especially last week with the Masters. Really appreciate that. Gabe really appreciates that. So make sure you are subscribed to his article. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, because if you're subscribed to his article, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening. So make sure you're doing that and follow him over on social media. Show him some support. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Any lasting thoughts, minute thoughts on the Masters, and then we turn our attention to the RBC Heritage and Harbor Town. How do you think the course is going to play? Who's your early favorite? Anything and everything. Put your thoughts and opinions into chat. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2026 RBC Heritage. We're going to start, as we always do on a Monday night, with the extended forecast over at Windfinder. Let me center this camera. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Already got Hoagie first round leader. You just don't learn. Reminds me, we had some back and forth a little bit ago, but I don't ever think I gave you, at least on Masters Week, your no, I don't want to say scolding, because it's your money. You spend it how you feel. But I was not very high on Tom Hoagie at the Valero, and you were, and he really did not play well at the Valero. So gonna give you a slight needling there on that. But it's good to see you in chat this evening. Much appreciated. I'm feeling Matt Wallace this week. Interesting. We'll certainly look at some specific players. With the around the green, I don't hate that. That is not a name that immediately came to mind, Phil, but now that you've mentioned it, don't necessarily hate it. We'll see what some of his prior performances at the RBC Heritage and all that. My just desserts. We take a look at the forecast for Harbor Town and the Hilton Head Island area. And it's going to be dry. It has been dry for quite a while now, from what I understand. And it looks like some wind might pick up, once we start inching towards the tournament, particularly on Thursday. Winds starting low but increasing throughout the day, especially with these gusts. And it looks similar to that almost every day, with the exception of maybe Sunday. So looks like there may be a little bit of wind to factor in, but remember, the first 16 holes at Harbor Town weave through a coastal forest. So a lot of the effect of the wind is going to be blocked out by the trees. The players are really only going to feel this on 17 and 18. Good evening, Moss. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Time to make some money. Let's go. We're going to try and find the optimal players, or players that we want to be focused on this week, particularly with DFS or maybe some outrights in that regard. Get us started off on a good note this week. Good to see you in chat. So yeah, I don't see much in terms of wind, particularly a wave advantage, especially since this is a limited field, no cut event. So anyone who does not withdraw is guaranteed to play all 4 rounds. Even if they shoot 80-80 on Thursday and Friday, they're still going to play the weekend. So with that brings in a whole nother set of strategies and thought processes that we need to think about moving forward. So anyway, there's a look at the forecast. 2.5 days or so from the start of the tournament. It does look like we might deal with a little bit of wind. We'll take a little bit of a look of some wind performance, but not a whole lot here, I would say. So with that, we'll move over to the rabbit hole and bet spurts. And whoops, absolutely did not mean to do that. My apologies. Let me X out of that before I get all sorts of thrown off. Let's see if there's enough performance in wind just in this calendar year. So if we look at moderate and heavy conditions, Potgeider got destroyed at the Masters. Aldrich Potgeider, for as long or as big of a hitter as he is very, very one-dimensional. You look at the courses that he's played, Mexico, let's see, in fact, if we just sort on salary, the courses that he has played well at, Mexico, Riviera is a little bit of an outlier there. The Rocket Classic is very easy. Now, the Charles Schwab is short and very challenging. The Farmers, Houston, these big, long golf courses. Houston, you have all of the missed room in the world off the tee. And really, at Torrey Pines, you do as well, especially if you go right. Now, if you go left on a couple of the holes, you're going to be in danger. But, for the most part, there isn't a whole lot of danger off the tee at Torrey either. Like I said, the Genesis is a little bit of a different story. Mexico Open, you have, miles of room. Those fairways are enormous. The Rocket Classic is very easy. He cannot perform well around the green. And the Masters and Augusta National will expose you if you are poor in any facet of your game, particularly around the green and putting. And Potgeider has not been putting well lately. He's never going to be good around the green unless, he changes his skill set. So the Masters was not a good fit for him at all. I don't see Harbor Town being a good fit for him either. Like I said, he needs places like Houston where he has a lot of miss room and he can just wail on the driver. Places like Torrey, even though he'd missed the cut earlier this year. Places like Houston, the Rocket Mortgage, those are the places that he is going to be at his best. So I am not particularly surprised by his performance or lack thereof at Augusta. Looking at 2026, and we do have players with high teens worth of rounds in terms of data, and the lowest is only 10. So I think we have enough sample size here. It's a little small, but in moderate and windy conditions, your top performers in 2026 have been Matt Fitzpatrick, Ludwig, Jacob Bridgman, Xander, Sepp Straka, Chris Goddard, Akshay Bhatia, Scotty, Colin Morikawa, and Sudarshan. Those are your top 10 in terms of wind performance just in this calendar year. If you want to take a bigger picture view, get more rounds of data in here, it then goes Scotty, Tommy, Harry Hall, Chris Goddard, Sepp Straka, Shane Lowry, Corey Connors, Ryan Gerard, Xander, and Matt Fitzpatrick. So either way you slice it, you've got a couple of guys up here that were in the top 10 no matter what. Goddard, Scotty, I believe Xander was top 10 in both. Matt Fitzpatrick was top 10 in both. So those are your players that have been the best in the wind. We are going to take a look at Pete Dye designs. This is one of Pete Dye's most famous designs, other than maybe TPC Sawgrass, a couple others. Now, this, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of 2022. Shane Lowry in wind might go Siwoo 2. We talked about Shane Lowry last night. He has been pretty poor here at the RBC Heritage when it's been a signature event. Now, he was pretty good here in a full field event. So, I've got my concerns in that regard. And like I said, don't get too carried away with that forecast, Phil, because the first 16 holes on property, the wind is really blocked out by a lot of the trees. You really won't feel a whole lot of wind until the players step up on the 17th tee and, of course, all of 18 as you play towards the lighthouse. So I wouldn't get too carried away with it. It's just I guess a tradition that I look at the forecast starting on Monday just to see if we need to factor in any wind. On Pete Dye designs, your top performers in the field this week for the RBC Heritage: Scotty, Justin Thomas, Brian Harmon, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Tommy Fleetwood, Russell Henley, Wyndham Clark, Corey Connors, and Sepp Straka are your top 10 in terms of performance on Pete Dye designs. Keegan is up here with all of his performance at the Travelers. Sudarshan in 2 tournaments has been very good. Of course, the excellent performance at the Players this year, and then I believe he missed the cut at the Amex earlier this year, but played the Stadium course pretty darn well. Some others here: Sung Jae, Victor, Ludwig, Morikawa, rounding out the rest of your top 15 or so. There's your top performers on Pete Dye designs. The only other kind of filter that we're going to take a look at is short courses. It absolutely applies here to Harbor Town. I just don't know how much I'm going to use this filter throughout this week. But your top performers on short courses in the field this week for the RBC Heritage: Scotty, Jason Day, Russell Henley, Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, Sepp Straka, Patrick Cantlay, Harry Hall, JJ Spawn, and Justin Thomas. You see that there have been a couple of field changes. I thought there were pricing. So what I can tell you is that not only has Rory decided not to play this week, earlier today Justin Rose decided to withdraw. So Justin Rose is no longer a part of the field. Taking his spot is Michael Thorbjornsen. There have been a couple of other field changes like sponsor exemptions. I believe Wyndham Clark was one. Max Homa got in on his number now due to updated performance from the Masters. There's another sponsor exemption I'm forgetting, but the big one is Justin Rose has decided not to play. He is withdrawn. Michael Thorbjornsen has taken his place. Okay, with that, let's take a look at Harbor Town and see what the course fact page here at the Rabbit Hole has to say about Harbor Town. We talked quite a bit about, a lot of this last night. Didn't talk about correlated courses, but TBC River Highlands, a Pete Dye design. TBC Sawgrass, a Pete Dye design. Innisbrook is a very, very similar style course, even though it is not a Pete Dye design. Innisbrook located in Florida, but a lot of people consider it a Carolina technical design with a lot of forced layups and trouble off of the tee, like Harbor Town has. Pebble Beach for the small greens and short course. Colonial, Sedgefield. So you get an idea of the style of courses that match up well with Harbor Town. Let's take a look at some of the data that we weren't able to look at last night. We talked about, or at least saw up here, how off the tee gaining was very difficult. Gaining on approach was difficult, but it was very easy around the green, and it was average in putting. You look at the off the tee here. Unfortunately, it's not lining up because the past 5 years, you've actually been gaining quite a bit at Harbor Town. So, not really matching up with what we see here in terms of strokes gained off the tee being very difficult in terms of listing. But then you come down to the numbers and it looks pretty easy. So, a little bit of discrepancy there. I still think it's probably pretty difficult to gain off the tee because most players are hitting it to the same spot. With these dog legs and these forced layups on some holes, players are just kind of playing target golf and positional golf. With that said, drivers are starting to be used a little bit more often. Let's see, for example, driver usage. You see this column here when it was a full field event, 53%, 52%. And then look when it became a signature event. It jumped up to 60%. So while it is still quite a bit less than the PGA Tour average, drivers are getting used a little bit more around Harbor Town. Maybe that is what is providing this number here. Still, you don't get a whole lot of 320 plus yard drives, less driver usage, less driving distance. Everything off the tee does seem a little bit easier though. Like the missed fairway penalty, not nearly as penal. The rough is not nearly as penal. The fairway width, this says 33.5. I would consider this a lot more narrow, especially in the landing areas. So interesting to note that. I'm still thinking about good drives on Pete Dye designs. Pete Dye is notorious for forcing players to choose between playing safe off the tee and having a very difficult shot into the green, or taking a lot of risk on the tee, but with the reward of, if you execute, having an easy shot into the green. So I really like that metric, and I'll show you why as we go through some data. Looking at approach, it is difficult to gain on approach here. These greens are small. They're going to get missed. Therefore, if you are good with your irons, you're gaining a lot more on the field. It is fairly easy inside 150, but pretty darn difficult outside 150. Greens are hit less often here. Greens are hit much less often from the fairway. But the fairway bunkers are easier to play out of. These are not like Augusta National's fairway bunkers that are cavernous and deep. These are just fairway bunkers that are meant to be a deterrent as opposed to a true penalty shot. Some other things on approach here. Players don't really go for the green. Not a whole lot. And they don't hit the green very often when they go for the green. We talked about how being around the green is very easy around Harbor Town. You see that here. I mean, all green. But you're going to use your around the green touch because greens get missed at a decent amount. So even though it is easy here, we're still going to be looking at some around the green. Now, the short grass is, the big runaway winner in terms of shot type around the green, but it is very easy around here. From the rough, still somewhat easy. It's just not as often. And then from the bunker, fairly easy. So we might just be looking at around the green. Good evening, Henka. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Patrick Cantley popped into my head for this, as well he should. Patrick Cantley is probably the most consistent performer over the years at Harbor Town. T30, top 15 last year, top five, runner up. He did miss the cut in 2021. Top 5, top 10, top 5. He's had enormous amounts of success at this place. So if you are thinking about outrights, it makes a lot of sense. Although you are not going to get the price that you think you're going to get because the books know he has had a lot of success here and he's coming off a pretty solid Masters. So his price probably isn't going to be what you might think, considering he doesn't have a lot of great finishes this year. But yes, Hank, I completely agree. Patrick Cantley is pretty synonymous with Harbor Town, much like guys like Webb Simpson is synonymous with Sedgefield. Scotty Scheffler is synonymous with Augusta National. Tiger Woods is synonymous with Augusta National. Patrick Cantley is synonymous with Harbor Town. He just has played extremely well here over the years. So good shout there, Hanka. Good to see you in chat this evening. Hopefully you had a very good Masters. All of your DFS went well. You hit some outrights, and if not, hopefully we're going to get you back on the right track this week. Some other notable things with Harbor Town. We've talked about the around the green. The putting, actually seemingly a little bit easier here. Slightly, but a lot of green. A lot of green in the putting. Now that a lot of that has to do with these very small greens. So you're going to be one putting more. You're not going to have as many 3 putts. But 0 to 5 feet, quite a bit easier. A little bit easier from 15 plus feet. 3 to 5, 4 to 8, 0 to 10, all of that is much easier. So yeah, putting a little bit easier than tour average. Scoring, par 3 scoring, these par 3s are pretty difficult, so I think we're going to have a decent factor into these par 3s. 200, 195, 192, 185, and they are some of the most difficult holes here, so that makes quite a bit of sense. The par 5s actually aren't that easy. The par 4s are. So one of the few courses that the par 4s play under par. Interesting to note that. And then what I was really interested about, the average approach ranges. Big number here in the 175 to 200. Quarter of your shots come from that range. You do get a few 200 plus with the 3 par 5s, and if players really lay back on a couple of the longer par 4s, but you still get several approaches from 100 to 150. So quite interesting in that regard that we have kind of this split, if you will, in terms of approach ranges, if you will. Apologies. I am... a pet is scratching at the door. So if you hear that, my apologies. I'm trying not to be distracted by it. So yeah, we'll take a look at a couple of the approach ranges as well. So there's a look at Harbor Town from what the rabbit hole has to say. I don't think we're going to do anything with Microsoft Excel in terms of deep statistical dives, because since this isn't a full field course, I think I've deleted that from my spreadsheet. So with that, why don't we go ahead and go into the players in the field this week and take a look at a few of these metrics that we think are going to play very well around Harbor Town. Now, I am going to go to Microsoft Excel in one regard here. This is from earlier this year. This is from the players. This was my players mixed condition model. Good drives on Pete Dye Designs was a big factor. Now, the top of my model did not perform as well. Had a 51 in terms of predictability. Like, approach was a little bit better, total was a little bit better, but 51 is fairly solid. If I were to sort this all on the players who finished in the top 30, I need to sort on column A. Like, Cameron Young was a little bit of an outlier there, but fits. You see Sudarshan was number 1. Harmon was number 6. Henley and Hovland. Then it kind of fell off, to be fair. So, the more I've thought about it, the more I like the good drives gained on Pete Dye Designs. I did the same thing, I believe, for... No, I didn't do it for the Amex. Not Pebble. Yeah, so it was just for the players. And I had some success with that, and I had quite a bit of success with it last year. First thing we'll look at, though, let's take a look at off the tee. And we'll do off the tee when on less than driver courses. Why don't we take a look at that? That ought to be interesting. So your top off the tee performers on less than driver courses in the field this week. Your mentioned Phil Siwoo, good shout there. Michael Brennan, Sam Stevens, Matt McNeely, Matt Fitzpatrick, Brian Harmon, Chris Goddard, Scotty, Taylor Pendrith, and Tommy Fleetwood. Just out of curiosity, where is Patrick Cantlay since he's been so good here? And middle of the road, so not great, not horrible. Okay. Another way we can look at off the tee would be on short courses with low missed fairway penalty. This probably would be a pretty small sample size, but interesting to note. Scotty, Pendrith, Siwoo again, Kirk Kitayama, Ryan Fox, Harris English, Pot Guider, interestingly enough, Sungjae, Morikawa, and Pinge. So I don't know how I'm going to look at off the tee. Might look at it a little bit. But I'm, again, much more concerned with good drives. And much more concerned with Pete Dye filter. So let's take a look at good drives on Pete Dye Designs. Top performers in the field in that regard: Brian Harmon, Colin Morikawa, Daniel Berger, Russell Henley, Sungjae, Lucas Glover, Scotty, Chandler Blanchet, it's only one round, Victor Hovland, and Tommy are your top 10 in terms of good drives on Pete Dye Designs. Cantlay rises inside the top 20. Not too bad. Something else that might be interesting is distance from edge of fairway. You have a little bit of miss room at Harbor Town, but you cannot be extremely wayward. So with that, I'll keep this same filter. Your top performers on distance from edge of fairway, the guys that if they're missing the fairway, it's not by much, On Pete Dye Designs, William Mao, Jordan Smith, very small sample size, Henley, Harmon, Siwoo, Lucas Glover, Ricky Castillo, Daniel Berger, Sepp Straka, and Fitzpatrick. Okay. So we're definitely going to be looking at good drives. Not sure if I'm going to be looking at much else in here. Maybe distance from edge of fairway. What I can tell you is distance, like driving distance, carry distance, isn't really that much of a factor. Not that I've seen in the past few years. Let's bring this in, and we'll go to approach. Your top strokes gained approach players in the field this week at the RBC Heritage: Colin Morikawa, Xander, Matt Fitzpatrick, Siwoo, Austin Smotherman, Ryan Gerard, Daniel Berger, Akshay Bhatia, Nikolai Højgaard, and Victor Hovland. Rio, Kitayama, Henley, Straka, Connors rounding out your top 15. Guys who have not been good with their irons: Garrick Higo, Brian Campbell, Marco Pinge. We saw this last week with Bobby Mack. Bobby Mack was really bad at the Masters. Losing 4.5 on Thursday, losing almost 3 more on Friday. His irons have been very Jekyll and Hyde. Johnny Vegas, Adam Schenk. Keegan has not been hitting his irons very well, although I think he was okay at the Masters. I vaguely feel like he wasn't too bad. He was still negative at the Masters, but negative 0.8, not horrendous, I suppose. Sung Jae Potgieter again. This is why I am pretty low on Potgieter, Phil. He is a one-dimensional player at the moment, and that dimension is very mitigated around Harbor Town. Ricky Castillo, surprisingly, has not hit his irons well, but to be fair, we don't have the measurement from his win at Puerto Rico. So I imagine he probably hit his irons at least somewhat decent if he's going to win that golf tournament. But otherwise, he's been in a slump lately with his irons. Glover, English, Day, Fisk, Nico, Sammy, McCarty, Pendrith. Those are the guys who have not hit their irons very well. Greens. Greens are pretty small they're pretty difficult to hit. These are very small greens. Green and regulation accuracy difficult. Maybe take a look at that. Morikawa, Scheffler, Spawn, Hovland, Connors, Xander, Shane Lowry, Sepp Straka, Tom Hoge, and Bud Cauley. Okay. We take a look at proximity. Let's take a look at proximity. Who's been best at the 2 ranges that seem to be enhanced in terms of importance around Harbor Town? 100 to 150, 175 to 200. Your top 100 to 150 players so far early in 2026: Ryan Gerard, Morikawa, Siwoo, Corey Connors, Jacob Bridgman, Berger, Bhatia, Tommy, Nico Echeverria, Russell Henley, and Tom Hoge. So you might be onto a little bit of something there, Phil, with Tom Hoge. In fact, why don't we take a look at the man from Fargo, see what he's been like at the RBC Heritage. 2 straight top 20s as a signature event is nothing to sneeze at. That is certainly good. I would caution you a little bit because all of that seems to be predicated with the putter from last year. Beyond that, there's not a lot here. I will say that. A top 25 in 2021 when the irons were in much better form. I don't know. This one's a little shaky here, Phil. And believe me, I want to like Tom Hoge as much as the next guy because I'm a big believer in iron play, and he's generally one of the better iron players around. But he's just not been. It's not been good lately. Yeah, he was good ball striking at the Valero, but then lost it all on the greens. And there's a lot of red around here. So, not my favorite profile to look at, Phil. I'm just being honest. Again, it's your money. You spend it how you want to spend it. I'm not here to talk you out of anything that you have a strong feeling on. It would not be my recommendation, is how I'll put it. Smotherman at almost 200 to 1 is a big price for a guy playing well this year. The issue with that, Hanka, I think he's starting to slow down in terms of performance. What is his price? Yeah, 6,300. He might be playing well this year, but the miscut at the Valspar, the WD at the API, Valero was fine. Like, really, he just kind of had a 3-week stretch here with the Cognizant, which fortunately I was all in on Smotherman at the Cognizant, so that was a very, very nice week for me in DFS especially. Players was fine. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little gun shy on Smotherman. I don't know about 200. I mean, I don't know about an outright win, Hanka. I think you could probably talk me into like a placement, like a top 20 or top 30. Now, in a very limited field like this, those odds are probably going to be pretty crap. But I just don't see the path to him to win this week. I just don't. Especially since the only time he's played here didn't go particularly well. So that would be my caution on Smotherman. The irons seem like they've slowed down from early this year when he gained, 5.5 at the Amex. He gained 5 at the Cognizant, gained 5 at the Players, lost a half, gained a half. They've slowed down a little bit. And that's what his driving force really was the ball striking. Because I don't think he's going to be able to gain 3 and gain 6 at the off the tee at this place. That's just not what this golf course demands. So that would be my worry with Smotherman, Hanka. At least in terms of an outright. I would be much more interested in placements, 3 balls, like whatever group he's a part of. For example, I'm just spitballing here because we don't know what group he's in, but being this low, like if it was like Smotherman, Blanchet, and Lucas Glover, like I would be willing to put to wager Smotherman in that 3 ball. For example, like if he's playing with other similarly low-priced DFS players or high-priced odds players, hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying with that, maybe I would look into that. But in terms of a pure outright, I just don't have any interest. We looked at 100 to 150 players that are good from, well, see, that's the problem. 150 to 200 in terms of the overall. Really, we kind of want to look at 175 to 200, but you're only able to look at that in fairway or rough. And like driving accuracy, a little bit higher here, but not by a whole lot. I'm not terribly confident in looking at the 175 to 200 fairway in that regard, because it's not a guarantee these players will be in the fairway. Having said that, I do like this a little bit more than 150 to 200, so for what it's worth, I don't like this as a statistic. I really wish the rabbit hole would match, like separate out the 150 to 175 and the 175 to 200 in the overall procs, but we can just go by what the rabbit hole has. So instead, we'll look at 175 to 200, both fairway and rough. From the fairway, in 2026. Your top performers from 175 to 200: Siwoo, Colin Morikawa, Sepp Straka, Cam Young, Victor Hovland, Sammy Valimaki, Akshay Bhatia, Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, JJ Spawn, and Minwoo Lee. We take a look at from the rough, 175 to 200, Cameron Young. So clearly he is one of the best from 175 to 200 because I believe he was like third or fourth from the fairway. Michael Brennan, Ryan Gerard, Sam Stevens, Thor Bjornsson, Sung Jae. Hey, look at that, Phil. Matt Wallace. What a shout. He's been very good from 175 to 200 in the rough. It's the only time we've seen him tonight, but he has popped on something. Putnam, Johnny Kiefer, Harry Hall. Let's see. What has Matt Wallace done at the RBC Heritage? Coming off the runner-up at the Valero, where he threw a complete game, gaining 6 with the irons. You really like that. He's generally pretty darn solid around the green. Putter is hit and miss. That's fine. The off the tee has been consistent. You like that. I don't know. There could be something here, Phil. I don't hate it. Last time he played, he was a miscut. Does have a historical top 20. I mean, he doesn't have the best course history. Yeah, I don't hate it. He's in pretty darn good form right now. 3 straight made cuts. What's his price? Probably like 6,600. You might be onto something there, Phil. I don't hate it. Let's go around the green. Even though around the green is very easy around Harbor Town, players are going to have to rely on this skill. Greens are going to get missed. These greens are very tiny. We're not going to separate out anything. We're just going to flat out look at around the green. Scotty, Andrew Putnam, Nick Taylor, Jason Day, Harry Hall, Ben Griffin, Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, Sahith, and Tommy Fleetwood. Lipsky, Noren, Fitz, Goddard, Ludwig Aubert, your top 15. Guys who have not been good around the green. Kurt Kitayama. This is what really hurt him at the Masters. Because he was actually okay ball striking wise. Yes, he lost a half a stroke with the irons. That's fine. It's not great, but you can live with that. He gained a little bit off the tee. He lost 9.5 strokes around the green. Like, he was really bad around the green at Augusta, which, Augusta's a brutal course. So, you don't ever like seeing losing 9.5, but you can kind of forgive that a little bit. Look at all the form that he was coming in, especially with the irons before that. Interesting to note, I guess. But at least in 2026, Kitayama's been the worst around the green player in this field. Brennan, Kiefer, like I was saying earlier in the show, Phil, Potgieter is just not very good around the green. Pearson Coody, Nico Echeverria. This is another reason why I'm a little squeamish, or very squeamish, on Tom Hoge. He is never good around the green, and you're going to have to rely on around the green this week. Mao, Berger, Woodland, Blanchet, Highsmith, Phillips, Ricky, Gerard, Post, and Burns. Okay. Definitely going to look at putting. And as much as I want to do something fancy and, look at, maybe things inside of 10 feet or 3-putt avoidance or anything, there's really not a lot to go on here. 10% easier overall, 20% easier from 0 to 5 feet. Nothing's really all that difficult in terms of putting, except for, the average distance, just because the greens are small. Like, there's nothing that stands out in terms of difficulty in putting. So because of that, we're just going to look at your top Poa Trivialis overseeded green putters. Harbor Town, Innisbrook, Memorial Park, Pete Dye Stadium Course, Quail Hollow, TPC San Antonio, Sawgrass, Scottsdale. These are the courses per the GCSAA that have Poa Trivialis overseed. Your top putters on that surface, or on this surface: McCarthy, Bridgman, Burns, McNeely, J-Day, Alex Noren, Ben Griffin, Harris English, Jake Knapp, Brian Harman. Scoring, very quickly. Definitely looking at some birdies. We'll look at this in a couple of different ways. Because I have this time frame up, let's take a look at birdies on Pete Dye Designs. I'm probably not going to use this in the mixed condition model, but if you wanted to see who can go low on Pete Dye Designs, no surprise it's Scotty with his Players Championship wins and the win at the Amex. So Scotty, Sudarshan, Patrick Cantlay, Siwoo, defending champion Justin Thomas, Xander, Brian Harman, Jacob Bridgman, Wyndham Clark, and Michael Thorbjornsen is 10th. Interesting. Bogey avoiders on Pete Dye Designs: Scheffler, Sudarshan, Ludwig, Brian Harman, Russell Henley, Justin Thomas, Wyndham Clark, Patrick Cantlay, Sepp Straka, Jason Day, and Sung Jae, and Bobby Mack. Sorry. So let's try that again. Wyndham Clark, Patrick Cantlay, Sepp Straka, Jason Day, Sung Jae, and Bobby Mack. Top 12 due to 3 players being tied at 10th. And then what I more than likely would do if I factor in birdies and bogeys into the mixed condition model this week, and it's not a guarantee I will, because I think the course is going to play average in terms of difficulty, and I don't like that filter. I generally try to do easy or difficult when I'm factoring in scoring. So your top birdie getters on short courses: Scheffler, Day, Straka, Smotherman, Fleetwood, Henley, Thomas, Yelamaraju, Siwoo, Patrick Cantlay, and Ricky Castillo. Bogey avoiders on short courses: Scheffler, Fleetwood, Jake Knapp, Smotherman, Day, Cantlay, Fitz, Burns, Siwoo, and Shane Lowry. Last thing for this evening. Definitely looking at the par 3s. And we're going to take a pretty good look at the 175 to 200. So par 3 performance this year from 176 to 200. Jason Day, Sepp Straka, Shane Lowry, David Lipsky, Jordan Spieth, Jake Knapp, Ludwig, Billy Horschel, Wyndham Clark, and Chris Goddard. Top par 3 performers from this range. Specifically this range, again, because basically all 4 of the par 3s fall to that range. 200 is the max. This could stretch above 200. 195, 192, 185. So lots of... the par 3s are going to be pretty important, I think, this week. Okay. With that, we're going to go to Microsoft Excel. Performance at the RBC Heritage the past 2 years. Again, I'm only going back 2 years because that's the current format of the RBC Heritage. The signature event, no cut, etc. So with that, I apologize. I needed this to be on sorted by average finish, and I'm still in alphabetical. My apologies. So the players who have played it both years: Justin Thomas, a win, and I believe a 5th or a 6th. Scotty, win, and like a 10th. No, win and an 8th. Brian Harman's been good both years. Poston's been good both years. Cantlay, Sepp Straka, Russell Henley, Sung Jae, Siwoo have been good both years. Jaeger and Taylor Moore are alternates, I believe, at the moment. Guys who haven't played well both years, it's been a signature event. Max Homa, really struggling. Gary Woodland, we're really struggling. Nick Taylor has struggled here. English, Glover, Connors, surprisingly, has struggled here. He's just not putting well. Ricky Fowler has struggled here both years. It's been a signature event. I need to remove Justin Rose. He's no longer playing. Lowry struggled both years. McCarthy, Bradley. So let's sort on a few of these important factors that we want to look at. We're going to start with approach. Who have been the best approach players the 2 years it's been a signature event at the RBC Heritage? Sepp Straka. Look at that. Gaining 6.5 per tournament. So he's been very good with his irons. Of course, Scotty. Batia has been very solid with his irons and has done not a damn thing else. But he's hit his irons very well here. Berger finished third in his one try. Cantley's been excellent here. Surprisingly to see that he hadn't putt well, but he's done everything else well. Russell Henley, Keegan, Novak, who finished runner-up last year. Campbell, Phillips, Matt Fitzpatrick, Justin Thomas, Finau, Tagala. There's your top approach players. The past 2 years at Harbour Town. Top putters the past 2 years. JT Poston, Justin Thomas, defending champion, Rogers, Day. I'm just trying to highlight guys that have played both times. Hoagie, Xander, Novak putted well last year in his one try. Victor putted well in his one try. Nick Taylor, only thing he's done well. Woodland's putt well, but has not done anything else well here. McCarthy, to be expected, putting well. Colleague Siwoo Kim, not the best putter, but putting well here. English, Sepp. Let's go with... Let's just go straight into the par threes. Kind of want to see that. I am going to sort on the par threes and see how much of that is in the 175 to 200. So 2.5 out of 4. You see, they even play some of those par threes shorter, like 150 to 175, 200 to 225. But for the most part, it is in here. Like 4 out of your 3 from Poston. Scheffler's been good on the longer par threes. Novak, all of it for Pendrith is in there. So your top par 3 performers, Rogers, has played the par 3s very well here. Poston, Scheffler, Henley, JT, Tagala, Fitz, Woodland to a little bit lesser of an extent. Woodland's been really bad on these par 4s, losing 7.5 on these par 4s. Woof. That's real bad. All right. Not a whole lot in terms of research that I can show you, but I will show you what I can. Again, there's just not a whole lot here with only 2 years of data. That said, we take a look at the winner matrix, performance of these winners going back. I went all the way back to, I've collected it all the way back to 2012. You had a couple of first-time winners late in the 2010s. Wesley Bryan, Satoshi Kodaira. First time they came to the tournament, they won. That said, look at these performances from past, of champions in the past instances at the RBC Heritage. Top 5 from JT the year before. Scotty top 15 the year before. Now Fitzpatrick missed the cut in 2022, but top 5 the year before that. Now, Jordan Spieth had struggled recently, but top 10, top 15, top 15, much more historically. Stuart Sink, not the best. He did have a top 15 and a top 25. He struggled recently. Webb Simpson, top 20, top 5, top 15. And a runner-up, further back. C.T. Pan even had a top 25 the year before he won. Top 10, top 10. So, especially recently, make sure the guys that you're wanting to wager outright, particularly to win, have performed well, within the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years at Harbour Town. And it's going to be a little bit tough considering now it's a signature event with a no-cut field and limited field. But, make sure guys have some kind of success in the past. How have the champions fared coming into the tournament? Justin Thomas playing pretty darn well. Like if we go from the beginning of March, he had a top 5. Scotty, 3 wins in in his lead up to the RBC Heritage. Fitz had a top 10 and a top 15. Jordan Spieth hadn't been playing great, but still had, some decent recent success, and he had contended at some point early in that year, just, much further back than these first 3 or 4. Even Stuart Sink, top 15 the Masters, top 20 the Honda, or now the Cognizant. He had been in good form lately. Webb Simpson had a win in the top 5 early in the year. And this is a little bit of an outlier. 2020, the RBC Heritage was played in June, not in April, so you can kind of throw that one out if you want. CT Pan didn't have much in terms of recent success. So, guys have been playing fairly well, too, recently. At least a top 5 or a top 10 since probably March 1st of this year. Make sure they have, a top 5 or a top 10. There wasn't a whole lot of consistency in terms of their most recent start. Some guys missed the cut at the Masters. Scotty won the Masters and then won the RBC Heritage. Some guys didn't even play the Masters. Most guys were positive off the tee, but Justin Thomas wasn't at the Masters and then comes and wins here last year. Any kind of consistency here? Maybe a little bit in like par 4 performance, but again, with only truly a couple of years, I didn't feel comfortable posting any of that to social media. So that's what I have for you in terms of research. Again, it's not a lot, so I didn't want to go too heavy on it. That's going to be it for a Data Dive show this evening. Thanks to Phil, Moss, and Henka for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. Always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. I'm going to try and keep my momentum going from a pretty darn solid Masters where I hit 2 placement outrights, essentially. Terrell Hatton top live, Sam Stevens splitting the top debutante, a pretty darn solid DFS. So I'm going to try and keep the momentum going for the RBC Heritage. A reminder, I mentioned this last night at the end of the show. I'll do it again tonight, and I'll remind you again Wednesday. Next week's tournament is the Zurich. That is the team event on the PGA Tour. I generally take that week off, and I'm going to take that week off again this year. I just don't do much for the team event, with it being not a true stroke play format. You have alternate shot and best ball and all that, the strokes gained stuff, and the data kind of gets thrown off. I generally take the week off. I'm going to take next week off, so I want to put that on your radar that there will be no shows for calls next week for the Zurich. But never fear, I will still be live Wednesday for the DFS Tactics show for the RBC Heritage. So thanks again for all the support. Very much appreciated. For all the wagers you've made so far this week for the RBC Heritage, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the RBC Heritage, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.